continuing the meeting.
I'm just making sure.
And we're live. We've gone live.
We've gone live. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Thanks.
Julian, can you go on mute? We can hear you typing. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I make it 1 minute past 5 on today, Wednesday, the 3rd of September, which means that we can begin Cabinet. Are there any apologies for absence? I believe I've got an apologies from Councillor Anand. Are there any urgent matters? There are none. Matters to be considered in private. We do have reports with confidential appendices. So as ever, if you wish to refer to the confidential appendices of any of the Cabinet reports in the pack during the discussion at Cabinet, please could you indicate beforehand. It will necessitate clearing both the gallery and turning off the live stream, which we do try and avoid in the interests of transparency and openness. So if you can avoid doing that, please do. If you really do not wish to, please indicate beforehand so we don't fall foul of discussing confidential information in public. We then go to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I see no indications. Minutes of the previous meeting. Are they a true and accurate record? And therefore they agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. We then move to appointments to subcommittees and outside bodies, which there are none, and then to number 7, which is the authority to tender the school meal service and extend the existing school meal service contract. Councillor Blacker.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of Ealing Schools Catering Consortium, Cabinet is asked to extend the current contract by a period of 1 year, rather than the 2 that the contract stipulates we can do so, and in the meantime procure a new service to commence from the middle of 2027 to replace the current one. And of course, we will be exploring opportunities to work with other boroughs if that gives us economies of scale and such forth.
I haven't had any indication to speak, so unless any other Cabinet member wishes to raise a point, I'll ask that the recommendations are agreed. Thank you very much. That takes on to the next agenda item, which is the Corporate Peer Challenge Report and Action Plan. As sort of Cabinet will be aware, the LGA has a process of taking councils through a corporate peer challenge, which is very much about making sure that we as a council are competent and able to fulfil our functions and duties as a local authority. And the last one that we did was some time ago, so we were certainly anticipating with very great interest both the process of doing the corporate peer challenge and also its findings. So I'm going to take you through some of the top lines, and I think they speak to the type of organisation that we've been trying to build over these last 4 years. And the culture that we've developed accordingly. And so it's incredibly humbling, if it is difficult to take a compliment, that the LGA found that we have achieved much, that we are well led and are moving in the right direction with a strong and purposeful vision for change that, according to the LGA and not me, the leader and the chief executive are well respected. And the peer team were incredibly impressed by the effective and collaborative political and management leadership within the organisation. That we've had a significant improvement in the administration's ability to improve children's services, and testament to the work that children's services have done to get us back to good from requiring improvement under the Ofsted ILACS inspection. But fundamentally, some of the more central pillars of the things that we've been trying to achieve as a council around our agenda for connection, community, and connecting communities, making sure that every part of the borough has got growth happening in every part that everybody is able to enjoy, and of course that we want to make sure that we're handing over power to communities who very often, if not always, know what's best for them and their neighbourhoods. That's been incredibly commended as an approach by the Local Government Association. So I want to put on record our thanks to the peer team. What it also talks about is the fact that we're incredibly self-aware as an organisation, and if anything, perhaps we sometimes don't celebrate our successes enough, and perhaps might have a bit of a deficit mindset when it comes to wanting and pushing for continuous improvement. So it takes a big discussion and an interest in, for example, our self-referral to the housing regulator and the work that we've needed to do to improve everything that we do in the context of providing safe and genuinely affordable homes for our tenants, or indeed just as other local authorities up and down the country face tough financial circumstances that we've, through our prudent management of the council's finances, been able to weather. That of course, as ever, could turn on a dime depending on the macroeconomic situation at any given point. So I do want to put my thanks on record to both the officer corps and also to the political leadership. This has been actually quite an incredible journey over the last 4 years, and we thought that the LGA peer review would be an incredibly important point for both self-reflection, but to some extent validation, that when we talk about fitness to practice as an organisation and being strong and well led, and having vision and clarity of purpose, that is what sets us up to be able to do the most important thing, which is to have impactful change for the lives of our residents. And we don't get to have the privilege of doing great things unless we're ruthlessly efficient with the organisation that we're entrusted with. So, you know, I do want to put on record my thanks to the whole team who've developed the thing that we have developed that we can be very, very, very proud of. So I have an indication to speak from Councillor Malcolm, and then I'll open up to comments from Cabinet.
Thank you. Let me, as you've done, thank all of the officers who were involved in that process. It's quite a huge number of meetings that took place over that week. So thank you for being involved in that. The report obviously makes a number of interesting sort of thoughts. I've got a couple of questions from that. how come we're still within the open referral to Roche 3 years on from May 2022, and when do you believe we'll be out of that situation? When will we release the external audit report to the public domain on page 6? And when will we get ahead of digital being engaged? Because I think that's one area we do need some attention on, which it refers to. And my last question is, what are the steps being taken to build greater councillor and stakeholder confidence in your voice, your town in Ealing?
Okay, so let's work through those. So, Councillor Brett, do you want to tackle the issue of the voluntary undertaking with the regulator of social housing?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, just to say that, obviously we are an open and transparent administration. And back in 2022, when we realised that, all was not well in parts of the housing department, we self-referred to the regulator. We have taken a number of steps in order to make sure that we have addressed all of the issues and actually had made some really, really good progress. And obviously there has been some kind of slippage on that. And we are actually, whilst we were working on that, we also then got issued with an inspection notice, which happens with all social housing landlords. And we're one of a number of councils in London and across the country that have been issued this. So we are currently under an inspection, and they've looked at hundreds of documents. They've interviewed lots of different people, including senior leadership, as well as other officers, and we are awaiting our outcome of that. So until that happens, I wouldn't be able to say when it will be lifted, but all I can say and reassure you is that the teams are working extremely hard to make sure that any outstanding issues are addressed and remediated against.
And I think, Councillor Malcolm, in relation to the audit process, external audits are published, and you will, I'm sure, from your members on the audit committee, sort of be aware of that process. So I think the report itself is effectively referencing back the activity that's already happened in that field. So it's worth sort of talking to members on audit committee. Head of digital. I'm reticent to want to at a cabinet meeting have a running commentary on staffing matters, which are a matter for the head of paid service and not for open discussion and in relation to staffing matters at cabinet. So I think we'll park that one. But you are a member of the chief officers panel. It's not chief officer, but if you want an update on sort of staffing arrangements, I'm sure you can seek that from the head of paid service. Councillor Hashani, do you want to sort of comment on the issue of connected communities, the Your Voice Your Town initiative, and yeah, go for it.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Malcolm, for your question. Look, I think throughout the process, I was especially pleased myself to see that the LGA peer group were quite impressed, actually, by our ambitions in our connected communities of work. In particular, they saw the Your Voice Your Town project as really a driving force in working with our communities, and I think that's reflected in some of the comments in the report. As you know, Councillor Malcolm, there has been a number of engagements with our communities throughout the work leading up to where we are now on Your Voice Your Town. Only at the end of last year, we had pop-up events running across the borough, almost 100 in our local communities, engaging with residents wherever they were. Beyond that, we've had workshops, we've had town events, there has been numerous events, conversations, engagements with our communities to really talk about the work of Your Voice Your Town and how we can involve our local communities to make the decisions that matter to them with the money on the table, as you know. Crucially, we've now got the town teams up and running, and this is a really significant milestone for the project, which will really help to unlock that funding. And I know that town teams across the borough, across our 7 towns, are meeting regularly to talk with their groups about unlocking the next steps, which will come very soon. And I'd very much encourage you, Councillor Malcolm, and your colleagues to please attend the events that you have signed up to in the future, because I think that, you know, if you do attend those, you will see the fantastic work going on and the engagement that communities are really leading in with this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from Cabinet? Councillor Newstab, Councillor Manro.
Thank you, Chair. It's great to hear from the LGA, and actually the whole process itself was really engaging and rewarding to have our work reflected back at us. And the most exciting bit, I think, that I found was really the validation that our connected communities work, which runs through everything that we do, and in particular is incredibly front and centre to everything we're trying to do in adult social care and in the health space, has been recognised as the sort of a transformational opportunity that we really believe it is. And I think the feedback that we've taken from the LGA is that we can use that as we can lean into their recommendations further to really see that as a way of driving the change that we want to see. And nowhere is that more particular or more relevant as when we're looking at the opportunities for really developing a prevention agenda with our NHS partners. So I really feel like it's given us that permission, if you like, or that to really push further on that connected communities work. I'm really excited about what we do next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this was my first peer review that I took part in, and I was very impressed with actually some of the feedback we got back from the peer reviewers about what was happening in the rest of the country. And I was surprised that they thought that we were doing much better than we thought we were. I thought, you know, we are self-aware, but there was this thing where they said you could go faster and be more ambitious for your communities. And in terms of my portfolio, in terms of place, in terms of regenerating the borough, they said you should be looking to go faster and deliver more for your residents. So it actually was quite uplifting to actually see that we maybe not, you know, we're in our bubble sometimes and we see the wider picture. We actually are performing much stronger than we thought we were. And I think that gives us the ability to actually be more ambitious for our residents and move faster with some of the things that we are working on. So it's a welcome report.
Councillor Donnelly.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think you've always spoken of this quite rightly in terms of a peer review can tell you whether or not the council you're part of, you think you're part of, is actually what's there. People come in from outside and experienced people, you know, not people highly regarded in their different roles in local government. But I think the key thing for me was they identified that we know what the challenges are we face. We know we understand the urgency that those challenges present themselves to us, particularly financially, and that we're not complacent or unaware in how to deal with them. There's a reference to I think burning platform. But I think we understand there's a need to get from where we are to somewhere else, and the somewhere else is the connected communities vision. And it was evident how impressed, I think, as Councillor Newstab was saying, was evident how impressed they were with how thought through and how all pervading the connected communities vision was for the way forward. But also, quite rightly, they're telling us that it won't just happen. We have to continue to make it happen. But I came away feeling inspired to carry on supporting my colleagues and our excellent officers in delivering that. So I am very pleased to have been through the process.
Councillor Brett.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to kind of reiterate some of the points that my colleagues have made. And I think, you know, again, to speak to being taken part in the process was quite cathartic in terms of an administration and at this point in our administration, because we're almost at the 4-year term. and also in terms of the fact that it validates the real hard work that the council have been doing, and also the ambition for our residents in taking that ambition forward, and as it said, be bolder, keep going with it, because actually the connected communities thing is amazing, and it's got so much potential to make sure that our residents are thriving, and I think that that's brilliant, especially under such challenging circumstances that many councils are facing. So I'm really pleased with the feedback that we've got.
Councillor Backer.
Thanks, Sharon. Had this happened a few years ago, perhaps before this team was assembled, both the political team and the office team that we have, I think the report would have read very differently about our self-awareness and our ambition to deal with the problems that the borough faces. Because we have, as a team, 2 teams and 1 team together, gone on a significant journey as a council. I think that's reflected in the report. But I think it is worth triangulating this with some of the feedback we have had from the resident surveys we've had in the last few years that are showing kind of some record levels of satisfaction, that this is not just councillors and officers coming in from outside saying, oh yeah, you can run a council, right? We know that our residents are also feeling that difference that we are making. And that we know the things that matter internally in terms of that financial resilience that we know that we've got a grip on, that we know the things that matter to our residents, and that the only complaint here is that we could do the things we're doing faster. We could carry on at a quicker pace and deliver more for our residents much more quickly. So it's a fantastic kind of endorsement of the approach that we've taken as a team, and I'm looking forward to making sure that we do drive that faster for as long as our residents give us the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Okay. I see no more indications. So on that basis, and with, again, I reiterate my thanks to the entire organisation for going on this journey and getting us to a very solid and positive peer review outcome that we can be incredibly proud of, and that will hopefully serve as the base point in which we will, as everybody has identified, go further and faster at achieving the change that we know that we need to achieve for our residents. So with that in mind, can I ask that we note the report? Thank you very much. And of course, we will bring this back with its action plan at a future date, so that we can have a look at what our progress is against those recommendations. I am moving now to, if I get my correct piece of paper, the fire remediation works pertaining to HRBs. Councillor Brett.
Thank you, Chair. So this is so Ealing have a number of high-risk buildings, and this is in order to start the procurement process to get specialist contractors in order to do all of our fire remedials. So it's quite a straightforward one.
Yeah, thank you. I have not had any indications to speak on this. Are there any questions or comments from members of the Cabinet? I don't see any, and therefore are the recommendations agreed? The HRB and M&E support services, again, Councillor Brett.
This again is to procure consultancy services to support our improvement works programme, specifically around HRBs, and that will be things like surveys and inspections and other specialist services that we need to provide, which don't exist within the organisation.
And again, no request to speak on this, and I don't see anybody's hand in the room. So can I ask that the recommendations are agreed? So we now move to the Q1 budget update. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to report that once again we have achieved not only a balanced budget but a minor surplus, which there are not many people in my position in London or around the country able to report that. Clearly, underneath the headline figure, the usual myriad of frantic activity and an awful lot of plates to keep spinning, and for officers to run round keeping things in order, worth, I think, making reference to the huge improvements in the budgetary position around adult services, which I'm sure colleagues will remember not that long ago had significant overspends. We have challenges in children's services at the minute, particularly transport and SEND provision remain very difficult, not least because of the degree of unpredictability in the requirement to provide these services. But we have significant planning to improve our offer across the children's services provision, as you know. In housing, we battle with homelessness. We battle to keep the tide of homelessness in check, and we've been improving our performance there quarter by quarter. So happy to take questions from colleagues on that.
Yeah, I've got indications to speak from as both are not in the room. You know what my rule is. If you're in the room, you get to ask first. But as you're both online, we will go to the Leader of the Opposition first, Councillor Malcolm.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 2 questions here. Could you confirm whether the open housing management system is currently out of support, as it's 2 versions out of date, and footnote 1 doesn't really add clarity. It sort of says it's unclear whether this is being supported or not. So I wonder whether the portfolio holder could just add some clarity there, because I know with the Windows 10, Windows 11 update, this can have a dramatic effect on service delivery. And then secondly, could you explain why on page 121, option 5 is being taken to move to a new platform with the existing supplier is a better value for money than exploring the market to see if a newer, better product exists?
These, I mean, I must say these are incredibly technical questions in relation to an appendices of the overall report. I think is somebody do you want to do it?
Well, you might be better positioned to talk at OMS than I.
It's quite an interesting one. So just to say that the open management system is still in use. So I'm not sure kind of what you're getting out, in Councillor Malcolm, in terms of that one. And then we've done the usual option approach. So 4 or 5 options in terms of your second question. So yeah, I'm not again sure what you're asking.
It's whether the system is supported or not. You can use it, but is it supported if things go wrong?
Yes, it is supported if things go wrong.
Okay, thank you for that question. Councillor Gallant.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just checking you can hear me, because I thought I was on mute earlier.
Yeah, we can hear you, don't worry.
Excellent. So could I ask, please, noting some of the, well, first of all, very good report and well put together, even I can understand it. Noting some of the pressures due to unaccompanied asylum seeker children, and there's an unstated pressure, which I appreciate must be a pressure, that asylum seekers achieving positive decisions and falling back on the council for temporary accommodation. I'm not asking you for any figures, obviously, but I guarantee others soon will. And I'm just really asking, are you ready to talk about this problem? The second question is for the dedicated schools grant deficit and the plan to hold this as a negative reserve on the council's balance sheet. And I assume that's standard normal practice to keep it discreet, but assuming the worst, i.e. that the demand will only rise, how can this possibly ever be recovered?
2 very, very interesting questions. Do you want to tackle the dedicated school grant overrides question first, and perhaps, yeah, the fact that this issue has been many years in the making of not the council's decision?
Yes, it has been many years in the making. For the moment, the practice of the previous government was to knock the ball as far down the fairway as it could. The new government is addressing the matter at the moment, and in the meantime has continued the ability for this money to be in effect held over. I think everybody understands that in the long run, negative figures on balance sheets have to be addressed. But it shouldn't. The situation was allowed to accrue under the previous government, and the new government will address it. This is the way we obliged to treat the money. Clearly, I think Councillor Glant rightly identifies that if in some hypothetical sense, in the end, the deficit overwhelmed the amount of money a council had in order to deal with it, then we'd have a real crisis. Now, we're certainly not at that point. A number of other councils in the previous government, particularly some Conservative shire councils, went to the government for special assistance in dealing with this problem. But we've managed the problem satisfactorily here in Ealing, and I see no reason that we won't continue to do so.
And what I do want to do before sort of handing over this question, if somebody wants to take it a bit further, look, I think we need to be very clear-minded from the perspective of the London Borough of Ealing, which is a sanctuary borough, that when we discuss the issue of individuals who, having sought asylum from the British government and having had their case assessed by the Home Office, and having been awarded the status of a refugee, that is a rigorous process that has meant that that individual has gone through such existential trauma and faces such existential danger to life and limb that the government have decided to award them the status of refuge. And that means that they are not, I'm afraid, Councillor Gallant, I'll take issue with the language, they're not a problem, they are a responsibility. And we know as a borough, as Ealing, one that is comprised of a diverse set of people. 60% of us are born overseas. We host diaspora communities that have come to this country fleeing poverty and persecution, many of whom have experienced the harsh trials of war and know exactly what it is like to be in the shoes of somebody seeking refuge and asylum. Clearly, the country as a whole needs a fair and appropriate system in terms of how we ensure that we process asylum seekers and how we resolve those situations. But I think we have to be very, very clear-minded that when somebody is assessed as being a refugee, that we then kick in as a community and as a council and as a public sector to make sure that they are reintegrated and integrated into our community and are given every chance to succeed in a way that they have had many barriers. So I am very mindful of the public discourse and the public debate over this as it stands. And I think we want to make it very clear that we are going to resist any attempt in this borough to make that issue one in which we have a serious political divide. We have managed so far as a borough through some very trialing situations in the last few years to overcome any of the divisive and politically toxic behaviours that unfortunately that we are seeing in other places that are preying on people's fears, which in many circumstances could be easily allayed were we to have a more rational and sensible discussion about the issue as a whole. We consistently have challenges when it comes to temporary accommodation in this borough, not least because of the cost of housing and the availability of genuinely affordable homes. And whether that individual has been on our council housing waiting list for 10 years, or whether they are on that housing register because we owe them a duty in some circumstances, not all, to those given refugee status, we will manage that accordingly. So would anybody else like to come in? Councillor Hashani and then Councillor Brett.
Thank you, Chair, and I think all of us here appreciate your comments and standing steadfast on this matter, and hopefully you know, to depoliticise a very sensitive topic. Saying that, we are a borough sanctuary. We were accredited earlier this year, which is fantastic. And since then, we've been working really hard to put those systems in place to make our systems more streamlined and better. That includes vacancies going out for our new housing officer that will be based where our asylum seeker residents are, to make sure that we're helping them to find appropriate accommodation, which sometimes will be private accommodation, sometimes maybe other sorts of accommodation. But just also to be clear that in terms of, you know, housing, to dispel the myth that, you know, anyone coming from abroad or elsewhere will get immediately on a housing, on the housing waiting list before anybody else. That's not true. Actually, the rules apply to all equally, and therefore, you know, that's a really important distinction, I think, to make. But yes, we are working hard, and actually all the funding that is funding the Borough of Sanctuary work is not core funding from Ealing Council. It is funding from the government, and we're using that to make sure that we're streamlining our services, and actually there may be cost savings associated with this work that we're doing overall. Thank you.
Councillor Brett.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to reiterate the fact that, you know, asylum seekers are not a problem. They are human beings who have sought sanctuary, fleeing persecution. And I just want to dispel the myth as well in terms of the increasing pressures on temporary accommodation and homelessness. The vast majority of people that present homeless to the council are people that are residents within the borough already and have been issued a Section 21 no-fault eviction. And the vast majority of people are those people. And you know, we have a duty of care to many, many, many people, including refugees and asylum seekers. Having said that, a lot of them may not have connections with the borough, and we will be working with them to make sure that, you know, we get the right place for them to live, so that they can restart their lives. And I want it to be on record that I 100% support us being a borough of sanctuary, and I think that you know, the rhetoric that is going on at the moment is fueled by complete misinformation at best. But I just want to reiterate that, you know, the vast majority of people that are putting pressure on the homelessness in terms of numbers are our own residents. And the pressures in terms of cost are because the cost of accommodation is gone up so much.
I'll tidy everything up.
If you could put yourself on mute, Councillor Malcolm. Thank you. Councillor Backer and then Councillor Manro.
Chair, just quickly on the subject of UASC, unaccompanied asylum seeking children, that Councillor Clamp mentions, if he has issue with us hosting them, the national transfer system of which we were part was obviously introduced by the previous government. But I do want to say and just reiterate the comments about being a borough sanctuary, and that's not just a kind of a sign on the wall. That is an attitude our residents and our staff have. And you know, I don't often talk about the feedback I get from our care leavers, because obviously it's very confidential to them. But I did have a piece of feedback not that long ago from a care leaver who had been a UASI, an unaccompanied asylum seeking child, who through the welcome they had received in our borough, from the love they had had from their foster family, their placements, and the care they had received from their social workers, had said to us that then their aim now as an adult was to come back as a social worker and give back that love to other children who were in their place. So it is not just some words we bandy about, it is an attitude that we as an administration, as a council and as a borough actually share on the ground. I just wanted to make that point.
Councillor Manro.
So I've spoken on this topic a number of times over the years, Chair, as coming as a refugee to this country at the age of 10 years old. It is really soul destroying, and a family gets broken up because you get kicked out without anything at all from, obviously it was Uganda, but that was a long time ago. But can you imagine the welcome we received and the support we received? And I think the national debate at the moment is quite a difficult debate. There has to be some control, but I think it's being used by people to actually terrify people who are in need of real support. And it's important that we stand up for them, because, you know, we received, or our family, my family received a lot of support from people. And I think we should offer the same back to people who need it now.
Thank you. I want to sort of conclude that element. I'll return us to the topic of the Q1 performance report in its entirety. Are there any other points or questions? I think the only thing that I'll add is, as I've expressed this internally in our internal meetings, you know, as Q1 performance reports go, in the history of the last 4 years of the administration and beyond, you know, one would sort of be quite thankful, actually, that even though we are projecting some overspends in some locations, the scale of those, the scale of the financial performance is such that we are in a much better and stronger position hitherto than we've been in previous years, and that is a testament to the financial controls and the rigorousness with which we approach financial management within the authority. And I think a Q1 performance report that says what it says in this context, you know, is a good symbol that actually the LGA were right to comment on our prudential management and our focus on control. We of course can still be better, and we'll aspire at the end of year to have the kind of performance that we were able to have in the previous years too. But that of course is going to require us to continue to make some quite level-headed and sensible decisions about how we deploy taxpayers' money and do that prudentially and with much rigor and with a focus on making sure that we get best value for money. So, you know, let's hope that the numbers don't appear too different in Q2, Q3 and the end of year. But with that, can I ask then that Cabinet note the report, and it's agreed. Thank you very much. We then move to the agency work contract. I think Councillor Donnelly, that's you again.
Thank you, Chair. As you may be aware, for some years we've used the Deco as the provider of our supply of agency workers. It's an important facility in the running of an organisation this size. We've gone out to look at that contract this time. As the report says, in addition to tendering through the normal procedures, we've made use of the organisation known as London Collaboration, by which London boroughs seek to use the strength of their kind of collective buying power to get the best possible deals. And as a result, we're confident that in renewing or in again agreeing contract with the Deco, that we're making the best arrangement that's available to us at this time.
Okay, I didn't have any requests to speak on this item, so I'll look to see the room. There are no indications to speak, therefore I'll ask that the report is agreed. So we move on to the decision on future Ealing on future of Ealing's borough-wide public spaces protection order. And in Councillor Annan's absence, it is to me to introduce the report, which, as you know, the administration is clear-minded in its view that it is the responsibility of the council to punish rule breakers and to tackle antisocial behaviour that makes the lives of our residents a misery when the small minority of abusive individuals take full advantage of our borough to do antisocial things. And we have a public space protection order that's made available to us through the Antisocial Behaviour Crime and Policing Act, which enables us to be able to regulate some of that behaviour across the borough, whether that is in our town centres, our parks and our open spaces, or indeed on our housing estates. We have to do it every 3 years if we want to keep it going. Whilst we are really clear that this helps us regulate some of that behaviour, we are also sensible when it comes to that enforcement activity, and we try always in the deployment of those duties to seek behaviour change, which means asking nicely, and when asking nicely doesn't work, moving much more into the enforcement space to ensure that we are protecting the commons that we all enjoy together. It's always, as always, subject to consultation, and that's in the reports too. So that's the introduction. I believe I've got a request to speak from Councillor. I think it's Councillor Gallant. Is that right?
That's correct, Chair. Thank you.
I'll go for it. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so you know, we support the extension of the PSPO, but what I'd like to say is that most of us have seen a slightly blank look of curiosity in residents' faces when we sort of cheerfully cite the borough-wide PSPO. It's a good thing. I think it needs more explanation, and the question is, how can we involve the public more in the rollout of the PSPO or the extension of the PSPO? And what can be done better in terms of delivery this time round?
Okay, I mean, I would sort of challenge the notion that people perhaps roll their eyes when we talk about how we deploy our resources to be able to regulate the behaviour of the use of the PSPO. So whether it's the enforcement powers that enable the folk who patrol our streets, whether that's the folks in our park or indeed the teams that sort of tackle things like fly tipping or indeed you know, people spitting and putting crap in the streets, you know, all of that, every time that happens and every time somebody gets a fine for doing something silly, that should be a tally on the public feeling confident that we're policing those streets accordingly, and of course the powers that it gives the police to be able to do things that they would perhaps otherwise not necessarily be able to do, or would be of a bit lesser priority were it not for the PSPO. So you know, making sure people feel safe in their community and in their homes, and that everybody who uses our streets and our parks and our open spaces is safe is of course an incredibly important priority. So perhaps Councillor Glant, you might after we re-adopt the PSPO, celebrate the fact that we have done so, and you will be one of 11 people in the room who'll be certainly doing that, I am sure. So unless there are any other points or comments, I don't see any. So therefore, can I ask that the recommendations in the report are agreed? Fine. And then we move to an update on school places, the determination of special educational needs statutory proposals for prescribed alterations to maintain schools, and capital approvals for including for special educational needs projects and condition programme.
If that didn't give you an idea of what a bumper report this is, Chair, there are 11 recommendations therein, but it is our regular update on school places as we start the new term, and we wish all our pupils starting this week well, and we retrospectively congratulate them for their A-level and GCSE results, some of which were absolutely fantastic. I was at Brentside High, who were for the second year running celebrating record A-level results last month. But I should note this report delivers at least 70 SEN places, which was what we promised in our manifesto in 2022. But it's not this point at which we celebrate smashing that, because we've already delivered 201 in the last 3 years now since we took office. So this just delivers a further 72 at additional resource provisions across the borough, but I can draw your attention to the approvals to increase the capacity of John Chiltern School, the SRP at Grange, the SRP at Lady Margaret, and work at St Anne's School to complete previously agreed expansion. So there are a lot of approvals, but there's a lot of work to do to make sure our children have the requisite places and buildings for a fairer start in their lives.
I didn't have any questions from members of the opposition, and I think actually the leader of the opposition's left the meeting already. Okay. Are there any questions or comments from members of Cabinet? Okay, so you know, I want to also reiterate the fantastic results always that the kids of Ealing managed to achieve in their GCSEs and A-levels. You know, it's a testament to the fact that, you know, almost 100%, there's always 1 or 2% that fluctuates, but 1 or 2, you know, almost all of our schools are either good or outstanding. which is a real testament to the work and the efforts of teachers and the pride that parents and teachers collectively and those people caring for our children put into making sure that our kids get great results. I always look forward every year. We don't get it immediately at results day. We have to wait a little bit of time at corporate parent panel to get the results of the young people for whom experience care. And we always seem to do incredibly well with that cohort of young people for whom always face, unfortunately, disproportionately higher barriers in terms of being able to get into places like university and onto further and higher education courses. So, you know, the fact that we do so well, I think, is a testament to the whole system. So congratulations to all of those young people who've got the results that they want. Keep going to those who perhaps need to do some resits or are thinking about what they do. You will get there, and good report in terms of the recommendations and spaces. So with that in mind, and with all 11 recommendations, are they agreed? Thank you very much. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. I have lost the second piece of paper that says when the next one is, which I seem to be doing at every cabinet meeting. So I will say thank you very much, and we'll see you whenever it is. Thank you.